Your interest today all over the world,
Right.
what do you attribute this to? From a very personal sort of a thing, since
Okay.
you also write,
Right. Yes.
you're part of that breed. What do you attribute it?
First of all, because India itself has opened up. There's a globalization everywhere. I mean, we all know that, and everyone's talking about India and China as the countries. But so all little pockets of India have opened up. Specifically, writing. I think it's just that there's so much more out there for people to write about. They travel so much. There's an openness now, and they want to experiment with a lot of different genres. We never had that before. Now you have a little bit of detective novels, you have a little bit of science fiction. I mean, I've been seeing
Right.
manuscripts recently, and they are writers who are writing these kind of stories. Before it was a very limited kind of writing. You had the great writers and who wrote in English, and then there was nothing else. I think definitely in the last 5 years, it's just gone.
And
All over.
how much of it translates itself into actually commercial success? And how much of it is just writing for the sake of writing, and how much of it really means that people can make a livelihood now out
Okay.
of writing?
I think before, maybe a few years ago, it was writing because you needed an outlet. People wanted to say something, and there was that writing for the sake of writing. I think that's changing now. We had the Frankfurt Book Fair, in which India was a major player. I mean, the success or not is debatable, but they were, for me, for example, there was a lot of interest. So I'm negotiating at the moment with an agent, etc., etc. I mean, that didn't happen 5 years ago. So now they're looking for Indian writers, which is great.
And what about in terms of themes? Do you see a certain kind of expansion in terms of themes? You mentioned genres, but I'm talking more in themes of how relevant they are. Do people dip into India to make it, or are they looking actually for global themes with just happening to be an Indian writers writing in English?
I think it's a bit of both. First of all, there's the Indian writer writing about his India, but I think he or she wants to have that global view. The thing is, countries now all over the world have that global vision. So you could have your little localized bit, but the way it's written, if you talk about a little shop somewhere with products, they could have meaning anywhere. So there's a bit of both now. I think there's the local and the global, and I think we're incorporating all that within it.
There has also been some kind of criticism at some quarters that there is a lot of derivativeness in Indian writing, that there is a self-consciousness, that nobody has really come up with their own style. That magical realism is part of kind of a thing that's been borrowed from Gabriel Marquez or Pablo Neruda
Okay.
in terms of poetry, or others, Milan Kundera, whatever. How true do you think is this criticism?
I don't agree, because first of all, look at Rushdie. Okay, he came out with that fabulous book that changed everything. You could say it had its
Midnight's Children.
Midnight's Children, yes, Midnight's Children. You could say that it had its, it derived a lot from Marquez, but he developed his own style, the words. I mean, it was absolutely new, and I think now writers are not looking, before maybe they would read and try and borrow something. I think there's a lot more confidence in starting their own style, in writing in their own way. So I don't think that that plug of deriving from a particular writing is there as much. I mean, of course, you're always learning, you're always reading, learning from it, but no, not in the sense we're talking about.
But how relevant are the themes of these people, especially people writing in English, to the India? I mean, how relevant is that? Because you see what is called vernacular writing, and there's a tremendous amount of rootedness. It's within the roots. How rooted is this writing within the India that?
Right. Okay. I think it's shifting. Like shifting sands, in the sense that it is not as rooted, I feel, as the writing was in, say, someone like Anita Desai's day, Nayantara Sehgal. It was very different, that kind of writing. They took a lot from the country, from India. Here it's a global perception, so it's not rooted in that sense, definitely. I mean, when I write, it's got India, definitely, because I'm writing about the urban situation. but I'm also see myself as a world citizen, so I'm taking from that also. So it has definitely shifted in that sense.
So would you therefore say that these writers are actually looking and custom making their books for a global readership and not necessarily an Indian readership?
No, I don't think so at all. That's not true. It's just that the way we are today, our vision today is more global. Okay, I'm talking about myself. More global and yet Indian. We have our Indianness in us, but we can, it's easy for people to identify and read about our country now, our little stories. Okay, so it's not that we're customizing it. No, then that would take away from any kind of imagination and the genuineness of the whole thing. So no, customizing it, not at all, not at all.
And where do you see the future now? I mean, what do you see happening, developing in the next 5 years, 10 years?
I think it's getting more streamlined, more professional. I think people are looking, lots of agents scouring for books and writers, and I think it's opening up much more. And I think if they can see that that our kind of stories, which have a Indian theme and yet have a interest abroad, it's going to explode. I mean, it will be very, very interesting because we've never had that kind of interest before.
And would you say that you still haven't really had writers who have actually found that Indian voice, the voice that spoke for Mexico and Spanish literature, that spoke for Egyptian literature, that spoke for Turkish literature? Is that still some years to come?
Yes, that's definitely not there yet. I have to say that. We're working towards it, but no, there is no Naguib Mahfouz, for Egypt. There isn't, not at the moment. Maybe because, again, all the writers who've made it so successful have that global thing within them. There's no Indian writer at the moment.
And would you say that one reason is because all these names that you mentioned, or at least the ones who are successful, found a voice, actually wrote in their own language?
Yes, maybe. So maybe we need to look at the translations, but that's a completely different.
Well, that's what somebody said. Poetry is what is lost in translation.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.